The gloves are off. The suit is back on. And I was not expecting us to get this confrontation this early in the season, to be honest with you. Welcome back, everybody. We are here to talk about Daredevil Born Again episodes 5 and 6. A lot has been happening the last couple days in terms of announcements. So, hello. Thank you for your patience as I work to get this review to you on top of like a million other things all seemingly happening at once. If you don't know me, if this is your first time on the channel, hello, my name is Amanda. Some people also know me as Vamp, and I cannot believe how good I think both of these episodes were for different reasons, very different reasons in terms of why I liked them. So I can't wait to dig into this with you and talk about it. First of all, spoiler warnings ahead. We are obviously going to be diving deep into episodes 5 and 6, and I'm going to be talking about some of my favorite things about these episodes and where I'm at so far for what I think is coming up next. Episode 5 is basically a standalone story. In it, we are dealing with a bank robbery where Matt ends up being at the bank because he's trying to figure out his loans in terms of growing his own practice with Kirsten, and that is mostly what we're dealing with here. He comes there to the bank, and then there is a robbery that happens, and as he's leaving, so he goes back and he has to deal with that. Also, Kamala's dad is in this episode, Yusuf, which is really awesome to see. Baba just works at the bank, so it's nice to see Yusuf as well here. And it's also St. Patrick's Day, so weirdly, this is also like a kind of a holiday episode of a show, which was interesting. In episode 6, we are dealing with more overarching stuff in the show. Episode 5 is really there to advance characters, a little bit of plot, whereas episode 6 is pretty much all about plot. This is us really hyper-focusing in on Matt Murdock and why he sort of feels the compulsion to don the Daredevil suit again and don his superhero persona, and also Wilson Fisk. And Wilson Fisk dealing with the fact that he cannot really move forward in terms of fully healing because he's struggling with forgiveness, which we've already seen, and it really comes to a boil in this episode. We get explosions of violence on both sides, and we're dealing with a lot of why that's happening. Fisk is also putting his own task force together to deal with an uprise in vigilantism on the evil side, really on the criminal side, with Muse, who is now finally starting to surface. And we're finding out that the murals that Muse has been making all around the city, they've got blood in them, so yeah. At the same time, Daredevil is also forced to confront Muse, which is also why he dons the suit. And Angela is here trying to also confront Muse, and let's be honest, failing. But hey, she tried. She doesn't have any amulets, okay? She doesn't have any magical amulets right now, so she's doing her best. So let's start with episode number 5, and I'm just going to talk about, my thoughts on that episode. I think one of the main takeaways for me with this episode is that I just thought everyone was so good in it, and I mean, really, this is a very solid ensemble piece. I feel everyone from, you know, the actor roles, these smaller parts, the people that were just in the bank, to Devlin, who is our sort of lead robber here. They're working for Luca to basically try to get this diamond in the bank to give to Luca so that Luca can repay his debt to Fisk and figure all that out. All of the characters that were even in that gang I thought were really well done, our robbers as it is. I also really like Detective Kim, who rolls up on the scene and is trying to de-escalate the situation and basically talk down Devlin, who has everyone in the bank hostage. At the same time, Matt also has a ton to do in this episode. He's basically trying to deal with this robbery and resolve that and save everyone in the bank, but he obviously doesn't have his suit, so he's trying to kind of do it just as himself, and he's working with Yusuf, and seeing their relationship and their dynamic kind of blossom in this episode was also really fun. Just everyone I thought was on their A game in this episode in terms of all the acting. I thought it was really good. Obviously, I also loved Ms. Marvel. That was a show that I actually really enjoyed. You know, it isn't my favorite MCU show, but it was still really good for me. And I think one of my favorite elements of Ms. Marvel, I wasn't doing reviews at the time, so maybe eventually I'll go back and do a retro review on it, but the family dynamic is, I think, the strongest part of that show. So getting to see see Yusuf here, who also, I have to be honest, Kamala's dad is actually one of my favorite characters in that show. He is just so good, and I mean, his relationship with Kamala as well in the series is so sweet. And so getting to see him here, and also getting to see him gush about his daughter, and also getting to talk about how proud he is that Jersey has Miss Marvel as their hero with the custom Funko and everything. That was super cute. Although I love how everyone online is pointing out like, he's talking about Kamala but not talking about his son at all. I also weirdly like that this episode is themed. I mean, it's a holiday episode and they managed to schedule that so it lines up really well with St. Patrick's Day, which just happened. So it was cool to see that come in. It felt very episodic in a really rewarding way, and it made me miss when television used to have like holiday episodes, and where each episode, while it still carries through on an overarching story, can just feel like a one-off story as well that you just watch. Like, this is a really cool episode, I think, if someone isn't watching Daredevil Born Again right now and you just wanted to give them a taste of what it's like, you could just show them this episode without really explaining anything or needing to explain what else is going on. As long as they know like who Daredevil is, this is just a fun like one-off story as well. I love that they let Charlie Cox be a little Irish in this episode. He gets to do his little Irish accent, and I was like, that's so cute. That's so nice. Devlin is also really good in this episode. Speaking of all the Irish elements, I guess. Although, man, rest in peace. He's never going to be able to walk again after that confrontation. I love the fact that Matt is able to use his heightened senses to literally crack a bank vault, which is insane. We're going to get some good fights in this one, and we did. We also get to see some really cool displays of Matt's powers, and I gotta say, Daredevil Born Again has really been crushing it with showcasing and highlighting why Daredevil is such a cool and powerful hero, even though he's street level. They don't make him ever feel like he's bigger than he should be in terms of what he can do, but they just have unique ways of showing how his powers can be used. And I always find that really interesting, both when I'm reading comics or if I'm watching like superhero media, when people can just approach those powers from a unique and interesting perspective. And knowing how to write powers well, it is a skill set. I love the fact that Matt is able to use his heightened senses to literally crack a bank vault, which is insane. Also, a lot of people in this episode once again reminding Matt that he's blind. And yeah, but the amount of time that people have reminded Matt that he's blind, I think in episode 5 alone, it was like at least 4 times. I don't know why. It just makes me laugh every time people are like, excuse me, sir, you're blind. It's like, yeah, I know. Thanks. I love that we also just get to highlight how hilariously tragic Matt's origin story is, with him being blind and being orphaned and all of that stuff. That was really entertaining and a nice kind of meta moment, I think, for the show as well and for the character. Episode 6 was the one that everyone told me, wait till you get to this episode, Amanda. Episode 5, whatever. Episode 6, wow. And I gotta say, episode 6 is very wow. It is also a banger, but I actually found episode 5 and episode 6 to be really strong, but just for different reasons. So I can understand why some people might prefer episode 6 to episode 5 in terms of what it's doing for the overall story and for more characters in one episode. But yeah, episode 6, it's also a banger, and it advances a lot of plot points. Also, I want to say to those of you out there that were mentioning Cole North, I saw some people in my comments. I wasn't sure if we were going to get Cole North. I'm not as familiar with, the team that I know Fisk puts together a team and all of that, but I'm not as familiar with like the key players on it. So a lot of people were calling that out, and you were right. Cole North, here he is. Is he the one that killed Hector? I'm not entirely convinced on that yet, but maybe. He definitely seems to be super into taking the law into his own hands, which is clearly why he got let go in Chicago and why he's come to New York. So I like the idea of us putting this team together who are obviously also the Punisher fanboys. That's all going to be coming to a head based on the sort of mid to late season trailer that we got, that I also did a reaction to and a breakdown of. If you haven't checked that out, definitely highly recommend you give it a watch. There's so much in that trailer that tells us about what's coming and what to expect, and the hype is real. Speaking of the hype, Muse looks insanely good in this episode. Can we just talk about how they just did Muse so well. I'm so impressed with their approach, with the look of the character, with how creepy he is. All of the elements are there for what I want from this character. I don't know if Muse here has powers. I don't think Muse is necessarily going to be implied to be inhuman like he kind of has been. I definitely don't think there's going to be any Inhuman connections because I don't think we're going to have Inhumans in the MCU. But other than that, I feel like they've just gotten everything 100% correct with this character. And even then, the Inhuman stuff, it's not necessary. I just always feel bad about the Inhumans because I do think they're really cool in the comics. And I just feel like they've been done dirty in the comics lately. But that's a topic for a whole other video. I want to do a whole Inhumans video, so if you're here for that, let me know in the comments. What I really loved the most about this episode is all the parallels that we see between Kingpin and Daredevil here. I mean, the show both starts off with them sort of paralleling each other at the beginning and also at the end of the episode. They're in similar places where they're feeling the pressure of situations in their life and not really knowing how to cope, I think, and deal with that. And it's clearly making them regressing into their former ways. And by the end, they just are right back in it. They've just completely thrown the disguise of their everyday life off and just gone back to those personas that they wear as kind of like a mask, but really I think the mask is them. And I love that Heather Glenn is kind of poking at Matt at the beginning of this episode without really knowing that she is, because she doesn't know that he's Daredevil. But this whole idea of why people are vigilantes. Is the mask the true version of them? Or is it that they are able to put a mask on so they can do these crazy things that otherwise they never would? And I definitely think the former is more likely for our characters in this show. I think their true self is actually Daredevil and Kingpin, and we're coming to realize that. And I love how the show is playing with all of these themes in terms of the story and how it's all building. It's coming together really nicely. It also goes to show us why Kingpin really is the perfect villain for Daredevil in this series, because it feels like that they're just opposite sides of the same coin. And really that coin would be like a double-sided coin, because their personas kind of serve similar roles for them individually, but they've just kind of taken different paths. I mean, Kingpin is on this side of crime and Daredevil is trying to do things for heroic reasons, but they have a similar nature, and I think that's really cool. We finally got Daredevil back in the suit as well, although, you know, I think a lot of people are still going to be talking about that CG. I don't particularly mind it. I think the running on the roof was fine. It's not like the best CG I've seen, but it looks very superhero-y. The things that I didn't like as much in this were that slow-mo shot we get of Daredevil off the roof. Which isn't CG. I just didn't like that it was slow-mo, I think. And there's a moment, which is a cool idea, a cool shot, but it looks weird because of, I think, the CG, where he is pulling himself towards Muse in the tunnels. That shot, to me, I was like, ooh, that was a little rough, but I like the idea of what you were doing, so I'll give you that. But those are really nitpicks. I mean, we all know that Disney also has a tendency to rush their animators, so who knows how long these folks that are working on the show were given to put these CG elements together for us. So I think that's important to keep in mind. And all I would say is, please, Disney, give your animators more time to make stuff. And also, please, Disney, just treat your animators better in general. The parallel between the tension of Matt with Heather and Wilson with Vanessa as well. Oof, these relationships are interesting, to say the least. And I think it's not going to end well for either of them. But we shall see. This is just a very tense episode in general. I actually filmed a reaction for episode 6, which will be up for my members, and I commented in that about how near the end, my hands were just, I don't know if they were on camera, I think they were off camera, but they were just clenched, and my hands were like sweaty after I watched it. Even though I know how a lot of this goes down, so there wasn't a lot for me to be genuinely concerned about, but because it's an adaptation, we've already changed some things here, nothing is guaranteed, and I love that about the show. I love how they are perfectly weaving a lot of different runs of Daredevil together and giving us something that feels fresh while taking inspiration from a lot of the history of Daredevil. It's really, really cool, and I sometimes just don't know where things are going to go. I mean, when Wilson went down to confront Adam with the axe, I did not know how that was going to end up. That was insane. I don't know sometimes what the characters are thinking, and I love that. I love that there's a bit of mystery. And it's not because I don't understand their path, it's just because they're at a place where they're so uncertain in themselves. I feel the same uncertainty with them. And that is some emotional magic that we are doing with this show. If this is where we end up in episode 6, I cannot wait to see what these next few episodes are going to give us, because I think this is the moment that a lot of people have been waiting for with this show, where it has been a bit of a slow burn, and now it's about to ramp up. Like I said, the gloves are off, the suit is on, and I think we're about to go completely insane with the next few episodes, so get ready, because it's about to get crazy. That's pretty much all I have for this one. I will say I would give both episodes for this one. My overall rating for episode 5 is a 5. My overall rating for episode 6 is a 5. They're both 5s. They're both perfect. I wouldn't really change anything. I mean, I guess maybe the CG could use a little bit more time, but that's really not enough for me to remove a star from this episode for episode 6. So I'm just gonna give them both 5 and call it a day, because wow. I tapped my desk and I shook the entire camera. That's how excited I am. That's all I have for this one. Let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments below. And like I said, if you missed that breakdown that I did for the mid-season trailer, check that out here. I'll see you next time. And until then, friends, stay nerdy. Bye!